And just to be clear, it's the kid part that's the challenge, not the wife part, right? Just so we're on the same page with that. What a joy to be with you again this morning. I think what y'all are doing is absolutely fantastic here in Modesto. To think through all of the 7 mountains of the community coming together to collaborate and to grow together, it's just amazing. So as you talked this morning together about, and begin to connect, what you're doing there is a discipline that really builds the fabric of impacting a city. It really builds it lifts the city. So I get the privilege of traveling all over the Western United States. And there are 2 cities in particular that are doing a fantastic job of spurring collaboration within the city. One of them is Omaha, Nebraska. They're doing some fantastic things in Omaha, where the churches are coming together, business leaders are coming together, and then those 2, the churches and the business leaders, are coming together to lift Omaha. The other city that's doing a great effort at that is Modesto. And I tell your story when I go around the Western United States. And you may be thinking, Dave, I don't think you know us very well. Here's the thing. You are going through the efforts of making it happen. I'm sure that there's plenty of work to be done. I'm sure there is. But I'm also sure that you're doing the things that it takes in order to come together and invest in the city and lift the leadership culture of the city. And one of those things is this monthly gathering. So when you think about how are you going about growing yourself as a leader, I hope that you mentioned Catalyst, because this is one of those environments where you get to be with great leaders, and that is something that spurs growth. And it spurs growth in you. It's also an investment in your city. So every month when you come to grow yourself, you're actually doing a community service project. And that's because you're tying yourself, you're locking arms with other key influencers in your city. And that is a powerful discipline. I want to affirm what you're doing anytime you're able to get together with other leaders, environments like this. I want to affirm that. Keep at that hard work. Draw the proximity close together. It matters. You're going to be changing. You are changing Modesto as that's happening. So I want to encourage you and commend you with that. So the other, as I travel around the U.S., I mostly work with and have the honor of serving organizations that believe strongly in leadership development. That's really what they're about. That's really what they're after. And so they have a bent for that. They work toward that. So in doing so, I get to kind of look and ask the questions when I sit down with these organizations and say, so leadership development matters to you. Would you share with me what are the things that your organization does to develop leaders? Talk to me about your leadership development pathway. And what astounds me is the blank stares that I get when I ask that question. And again, I'm sitting with organizations that appreciate and understand the importance of leadership development. And yet, they don't have a response to that question about how it gets done. And I wonder if that's because we tend to focus as leaders on activity and the fury of getting things done, right? Where we say, okay, that's what needs to get done, and we just go at it so hard. But taking other people along with us and unlocking their potential along the way, that takes time. And quite frankly, as leaders, we don't have time. We've got stuff to do. And so anything that slows us down, we tend to resist. So I think about mowing when I teach my kids how to mow our lawn. And I abhor yard work. I mean, I cannot stand yard work. It is not my thing. I see it as this colossal waste of time. Some folks, they curate their lawn and they curate their garden, and I think it's beautiful. I enjoy looking at it, but it's just not my thing to do. So I don't have grass. I have children. So we go and we mow the weeds from time to time. And so when I teach my kids how to mow the lawn, we're out there, and I want to get this done in a very specific amount of time, because it minimize this yard work thing. So we go out and I'll say, okay, here's the lawnmower, here's how to use it, ready, let's go. And it is pain on a stick for me to watch them mow the lawn because it's just so agonizingly slow, right? They take this thing and when they're making a turn, instead of just pushing it down, pivoting on the one wheel, and boom, you're off on the next one. It's kind of this little push it a little bit, move it, and kind of twist it, and every turn takes forever. It's you've heard of a K turn. I don't know what letter that is. It just takes way too long. Then they go and they make their stripe, and they got to do it again. And then they do 5 steps ahead, and then they realize they missed a bunch, and so they got to pull it back and realign and go over that. Don't let me even get started on bagging. I mean, it's a whole nother ball game. There comes a point in that process where I just say, thank you so much for your contribution today. My turn. Go away. I want to actually finish this. I want to get this done and do other stuff. I wonder how often we as influencers, we as leaders, do a similar thing. Where we say, here's something that has to get done, and we bypass the opportunity to develop others along the way, to help others reach their full potential along the way. It takes a little bit of extra time. But of course, human potential is a limitless resource. And it's the most important contribution that we have in any of our endeavors. So unlocking human potential becomes so critical to who we are as leaders, to who we are as influencers. Can you imagine in Modesto if everyone was reaching their full potential? That would be a pretty amazing thing. You start to go through in your mind all of the parts of your city, and it's led by people who are fully developed at their full potential. They're in their sweet spot. That sounds like a fantastic place to live. So how do we go about unlocking the potential of others? What does that look like specifically? So there's some organizations that have an incredible culture of leadership development. They just produce leaders constantly. They don't ever have to hire externally. They just hire internally because their culture is constantly unlocking the potential of others. One of the larger companies that has a reputation for this is General Electric, worldwide company. And I remember learning that GE has this place called Crotonville. It's a leadership development campus, and they send folks from all over the place to go to Crotonville and to grow, to have their potential unlocked. Their CEO invests 2 days a month in teaching at Crotonville. The CEO. And he's not just teaching his direct reports, he's teaching people at all strata of the organization. 2 days a month in one of the world's largest companies. They spend $1 billion a year on leadership development. And when I heard that, I thought, okay, so with the organization that I'm a part of, I need to make sure that we're spending $1 billion on leadership development. Let's get after that. So let's start raising some money. And the point there is not the amount of money. The point there is that it takes a large set of resources to bring leadership development, to make it happen. It might be financial, but it might be time or energy as well. So there's some great organizations that go about doing this. So because I get these blank stares so often about, tell me about your leadership development pathway. How do people grow as leaders in your organization? Because I get the blank stares so often on that, I set about asking some organizations that do this really, really well. I set about asking them just an informal kind of survey, if you will. And how do you go about doing this? And I wanted to kind of do a deeper dive with these organizations that I had encountered in my travels and see if there might be some common threads between these organizations that do a great job in their communities with leadership development. And then maybe we could start putting together some characteristics, some essentials that have to be part of the mix. The model doesn't matter. The model can change, but what are those bare minimum essentials that are common throughout organizations that do a great job with leadership development? One of those is they have a point leader. They have someone who is charged with, tasked with, has the responsibility for leadership development within the organization. They don't just haphazardly think, oh, every now and again we're going to gather people together and we're going to do stuff. They actually think about it. They have a system. They have somebody who is going about doing that. So it might be a staff member. It might be a volunteer. That doesn't matter. It's somebody who's entrusted with monitoring this. It might be the top person in the org chart. It most frequently is not. But it's somebody who part of their responsibility is to go about making sure leadership development happens within the organization. So who's charged with leadership development in the organization that you're part of? How much time is that person allocated to do leadership development? How do you know when they're successful? How do you measure it? Just like in any other position in an organization, you have a job description, you have metrics to evaluate how they're doing. This one is no different. Even if it's a slice of their job, a slice of their contribution, it doesn't have to be this is the only thing that they do. It could be just part of it. There is a point leader in all of these. Another key ingredient is it's calendared. Organizations that have a great leadership development culture can point to leadership development on their calendar systematically, rhythmically. It just happens with an ongoing cadence. They don't do it haphazardly. They don't do it from time to time. Most often, it happens at least monthly, that there is some kind of a leadership development activity for the people in the organization. And whatever that looks like. Again, the model isn't as important, but it is calendared. So as I think about leadership development, growing myself, I need to be honest and look at my calendar and say, where is it that I am availing myself, that I am allocating time to grow as a leader? Where is that happening in the organization that I'm a part of? What does that look like? We need to be able to point to it on our calendars within our own lives and within our organizations. Another key essential in organizations that grow leaders, that unlock the potential of others, is their pathway includes discussion. It includes interaction. Here's where I think we get hung up when we start developing a leadership development process, right? Is that we say, okay, we're going to get serious about leadership development. And what we do is we pull together a couple of key individuals in our organization. We say, okay, we're going to do leadership development. So what do we need to teach people? And then we get into this discussion about all the different components of leadership. And we say, okay, we just do a long list of all of those possibilities. And then we start debating, well, which ones do we actually need to cover? And then we get stuck. Because it becomes too much work to actually nail down the content. Here's the reality. We overcomplicate leadership development. It doesn't have to be that hard. We don't have to sit down and write a 42-week-long curriculum before we start. We don't need to do that. Every month, when you come to Catalyst, one of the things I love about Catalyst is there is a clock on the speaker. And that clock exists because Catalyst understands the real valuable time is when you, around your tables, start to interact with what has been presented. The discussion element is so important to growing ourselves as leaders. It's so important to a leadership development pathway. If you get in an environment where leadership development is exclusively a classroom setting, it is not as effective as when folks have an opportunity to interact, to discuss, to share, to kick the tires on what's been presented. Another characteristic is it's people-oriented, not content-oriented. How can we orient ourselves toward people and getting people done through work rather than work done through people? What does it look like for us to think first about this vision that we have? If your vision isn't big enough to exceed the workforce that you've got, you may not have a big enough vision. Have a big vision so that you can start to think, okay, we don't have the people to get this done right now, but who is it that's next most ready to get that done? What is it that they need in order to get that done? Now I'm focused on approaching leadership development from a people side of things, thinking about specific individuals and what tools and equipping they need to unlock their potential to contribute toward the vision that we've got. So we think about people orientation rather than content orientation. Again, removing the emphasis on what is that curriculum that we've got. Content is important, but it's not the end game. The end game is unlocking potential. So let's have ourselves be people focused and share content with them. That's fine. But what is it that they need? How do we get them to reach their full potential? Here was a surprising characteristic. Is invitation. So all of the organizations that I talk to that are fantastic at developing leaders, they don't just say, hey, anybody show up to our leadership development track, all in kind of a thing, whatever. They go about the process of carefully selecting people for a leadership development process. And I think there's two pieces about this that are particularly engaging. One of them is when somebody comes up to you and they say, I see great potential in you. The value that you bring to this organization is incredible. And I think you have even more in you, an even greater contribution that lies ahead. Would you consider going through an intentional leadership development process with our organization? People love hearing an invitation like that. Somebody has just believed in me, seen something in me, understands the contribution that I have. Who's going to say no to that? So that's one piece of it, is it starts that unlocking potential journey just with the invitation alone. Another piece of it is this, is it orients the organization to start looking for potential to get unlocked. So the best organizations that go about these invitations, the ones that are of size maybe have departments, and each of those departments looks within their department for these folks to unlock potential of, and they nominate them for the leadership development track. This is the emerging leaders track, or the fast track for high performers, or whatever. What that does is it embeds within the organization everybody's looking for human potential. They're looking to nominate it. They're looking to invite it. So there's something powerful about this invitation thing. Is it's the beginning of that unlocking the potential journey, and it also is important to the culture of the organization. So who are those eyes in what you're a part of that are looking for that potential? I recognize that not all of us in the room, myself included, are part of a 100-person company or a 100-person organization. So if you're sitting here thinking, that's not me, so this is really nifty, I hope it serves those leaders in the room that are good for them as they develop a leadership development pathway with these essentials. Let's look a little bit closer and maybe challenge ourselves. If we're a sole proprietor, or we're not part of an organization that is of scale, we can still embody these essentials. We can still do these things. So I've challenged myself on this. A couple of years ago, it was on my heart to do this type of thing and to do it organically. And so I invited some nonprofit leaders in my community, and I said, hey, would you be willing to go on a leadership development journey where we just get better as leaders? And that'll mean 75 minutes a month of your time. And for the last 2 or 3 years, we get together once a month, and some of the people in the group change and fall in or out, and we exclusively sharpen one another as leaders. We're committed to investigating some kind of content outside of our time together, and then we call it Leadership Roundtable, and we come to the roundtable, and we have 2 things in mind. One, what's an aha moment or something that you can share from your content? And 2, what's a question that we can discuss as a group? It's that simple. The other day I had coffee with one of the folks in the group, and he's an executive coach in the business world. And I said, okay, Graham, you got to be honest and expose a blind spot to me. All right? Is this worth our time anymore? And he said, Dave, this is the 75 most important minutes in my month. This matters. The nonprofit leaders in the group are innovating new things in their nonprofits to become more effective in our community. There's no magic silver bullet here other than the fact that it's calendared. There's a point leader who really does nothing more than put it on the calendar and suggest some content. There's interaction and discussion that's happening. They were all invited to it. It has these elements, and I'm not at the top of the org chart in a large organization. These are just people in the community that we get together with. That's it. What if that happened 100 times in Modesto? What if there were that many little round tables that were looking to get better, that embodied these essentials? What kind of potential might get unlocked? My point there, don't dismiss these things if you're not an organization of size. This stuff applies to organizations of size, for sure, but it can also apply to each individual as well. So my challenge to you is to live these essentials out in your life. Your investment in unlocking the potential of others is a service to your city. It changes the leadership culture in Modesto. Modesto gets better when leaders get better. What are you doing to help unlock the potential of people in Modesto? What kind of time and energy might you be willing to allocate toward that? Okay, we want to actually practice one of these things. And again, this is one of the things I love about Catalyst, is the importance of interacting around the tables. So what we'd like to do is turn our attention to that. And we've got a few questions that we'll put on the screen that you can go through at your tables together. And here's the only thing that we would ask. Would you make sure that everybody at your table has an opportunity to speak? And if that means just, gently nudging the person next to you, do that so that you can pass the mic, if you will. But just make sure everybody has an opportunity to contribute to the discussion. And thank you for your contribution to one another in these moments. It's highly valuable what you're about ready to do. So go about a community service project, would you?